now. Okay, so I am going to start the recording. Thank you. Our presenter today is Jen Stern Hasemann, we hosted Jen last June when she talked to us about how to adjust non-stretch patterns for stretch fabric. Also, you may have taken classes from Jen during Sew Expo. Jen Stern is the owner and designer at Jen Stern Designs. She has a solid background in pattern design and drafting, fit and construction. Her original line of fashion patterns feature classic jeans, a cup-sized fitted shirt, and a unique tee. Since then, she has added an easy fit and sew collection of knit garments, stretch jeans, knit jeans, and happy pants, non-stretch pants pattern, and fit workbook. Her focus is drafting flattering patterns with easy to follow instructions and fitting techniques. She loves to share a wide variety of sewing, serging, fitting, and construction techniques via her Jen Stern Designs YouTube channel, where she currently has over 100 video tutorials. Additionally, she teaches online at craftsy.com and patternview.com and in person around the country. Today, Jen will talk about pattern grading for the home sewer. This is a useful skill because we can pick up vintage patterns for a few cents, but they may not be in our size. Or as we have found with past experience, patterns used in a workshop may not include a complete size range. Or we may be sewing for children in multiple size ranges and prefer not to spend money on multiple patterns. Jen's techniques will have us leaving the presentation with tools and confidence to grade patterns to the perfect size for our shape. We are so thrilled that Jen has agreed to present for us today. Welcome, Jen.
Sorry, I didn't mean to start laughing, but I've updated my bio so many times and I've never changed the fact that I probably have close to 500 videos on my YouTube now. That's how long ago.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. So
I'm going to go. I just want to warn you, I'm going to go to speaker view now so that you'll be focused during the presentation.
Okay. Don't be frightened, anybody. I didn't do my hair and makeup.
I just also want to remind everybody that we should turn off our cameras so that we can increase the bandwidth and everybody will be able to enjoy the presentation fully without any interruption. So I'm going to go ahead and shut my camera off and I recommend you do the same. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be sharing my screen with you because I'm going to be showing you how to do pattern grading for the home sewer via a slideshow. And if people have questions, I would prefer that they get asked as you have them. So I don't know if you want to just unmute yourself and just say them or put them in the chat and whoever's monitoring the chat can check that for me. I have a hard time keeping track of the chat when I'm sharing my screen. So, if you have a question, just feel free to shout it out or someone let me know and we'll talk about it at that time, because then we won't be flicking back and forth slides as much as possible. But also, if you have a question that is gone by, ask away. I love questions. All right, so we're going to be doing grading for the home sewer. And I just want to start out by talking about, what is pattern grading? And I think the most well-known or common fact about that is when you buy a fashion pattern, it comes in a range of sizes. So if you look at the sample size chart and yardage chart on the back of a pattern, what you're actually looking at is a set of graded measurements, and the amount that a pattern is graded changes based on the size range that you're working with. So just simply, the smaller sizes will usually have about 1.5 inch difference between measurements, the mid-range 2 inches, the larger range 3 inches. And you can see here, this is a sample size chart where you can see those incremental changes, usually waist, hip, sometimes chest, bust, waist, hip. Those are the things that can be included in this size range. And the difference between the sizes is determined by a grade rule. So the way you get those incremental changes is by changing points around the pattern, both horizontally and vertically, to get those differences. And the X direction is going to be the horizontal direction, either in the left or right direction. The left direction would be the minus direction, the right direction would be the plus direction. And then in the Y direction, it's the same thing. The plus is up and the minus is down. So this is just an example. If we were working with a 2 inch grade, the areas that you would be changing would be the neckline, the shoulder at both ends, the armhole notch, the top of the side seam, the waist at the side seam, and the hem at the side seam. And also the center front at the hem as well sometimes. This is just an example. Notice sometimes you don't move the grade point in both directions. So in this case, see how center front, it's 0. So you wouldn't move it that way. You would just move it up 1/4. And we'll get more into this. I just wanted to jump right in and show you what a grade rule looks like. All right, so now that I showed you that, I want you to look at this slide of varying height and weight and sized women. And what you can notice here is the size range in this illustration goes from 10 to size 18. But what I want you to look at is notice how their shoulders and neck almost look identical in size across the range of different heights and weights and sizes. That's because we don't grow the same in different parts of our body. So a 2 inch grade rule is not going to change the pattern 2 inches across all the sizes in all the areas. So this is a really good example. This is just a tank top pattern. And you can see the neckline, the shoulder, and the armhole. All of that area has a much smaller adjustment between sizes or change between sizes, as does the side seam. All right, so now how do we apply the grade rule to a pattern piece? We're going to be working, as I mentioned before, in the XY direction. So the X direction is horizontal and the Y direction is vertical. And basically what happens here is for a simple garment, meaning it has, let's say it just has, it's a half pattern. So you're working with like the front and back of a top. All of the grading for a 2 inch grade, for example, would be divided by 4. So you can distribute it across, the 4 edges of the pattern. If you're working with a pattern that has more seams, then the amounts of change would be different or less because you'd have to divide it by the number of seams you have. But basically, this is a grade rule, and then each of the areas that you're going to change are listed in this chart. And you can see the neckline and the shoulder areas are much smaller. So for example, the center front neckline is only getting raised 1/4 inch. The shoulder's only raising 1/4 inch. The shoulder seam itself only has 1/8 inch adjustment, but notice they're going in the same direction here. So if you have the neckline shoulder and the armhole shoulder and they're both moving the same, that means the physical length of the shoulder on this pattern is not changing shape. It's just moving out to reflect the, just the width across your body. But then notice down at the side seam, you have the full 1/2 inch this is for a 2 inch grade. So it's divided in quarters for that. So that's how that works. These are the places where that grade rule is going to be applied. And in the pattern grading industry, these are called cardinal points. And those are just the areas that you decide along the pattern where you're going to be making these adjustments.
Excuse me, Jennifer, there was a question. It looks like somebody raised their hand. Becky, Becky, did you have a question? You can unmute for a minute. Oh. Looks like she's not responding. I'm sorry for the interruption.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Seriously, if anybody has questions, just let me know. That's fine. Okay.
There is one more question from Bradley. How are the grade points and amount of increase and decrease? And then it dropped off. Bradley, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just how are those the cardinal points or whatever? Is that standard across all garments, or is it arbitrary that they picked them? And the ratio, or like a 1/4 inch here and a 1/2 inch here and 3/4 inches there, how is all that decided?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So I'm just going to go back over here. Okay, so typically there are sets of grade rules. So like the industry standards, for example, are you can have 1 inch for the very smallest sizes, like from 0 to 6. You could have a 1 inch increase or decrease between sizes, and then 8 to 12 could be 1.5 inches. 14 to 18 can be 2 inches, and then 18 and above can be a 3-inch difference between sizes. So that grade rule is applied to all the areas of the body that grow that much. And the parts of the body that don't grow, meaning your neckline and your shoulders and your armhole. So if you look at this picture, those amounts are reduced because the human body does not grow or shrink across sizes as much. So you're just adding a little bit to help keep the pattern in proportion. So if we look at this picture, this is an example of a graded nest. A graded nest is what you see when you purchase a fashion pattern. So here would be the smallest size is probably, I don't know, extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, and so on. So you can see that the differences in the lines get greater as you go out to the larger sizes. And the places where you're going to grade a pattern are pretty standard. So the places where these dots are, or these cardinal points, are all the places that you want to change the pattern. So it really depends on the size you're working with, and then the amount of seams you have as well. So for a standard pattern that just has side seams, you're going to divide the grade rule, like let's say it's a 2-inch grade rule, you're going to divide that by 4 because you have 4 side seam edges to adjust. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so, and then you can see here how they're applied. Notice the change is so much smaller than up at the top than it is along the side seam. If I graded the top of this pattern 1/2 inch, what would happen is the whole top would be artificially inflated in length and width, and it would, the armhole would hang off, the tip of the shoulder would hang off your shoulder because shoulders don't grow very much. Like average, I mean, you probably can get, if you measure women's shoulders or men's shoulders, there's probably only 1 inch difference, or maybe 1.5 inches difference from the smallest human shoulder you can measure to the largest human measure. You know what I mean? The physical length of your shoulder. So that's why it's much smaller at the top of the pattern there. Now, having said that, notice this pattern See how in this case, you can actually grade the pattern differently. So the points are still the same. I'm still going to grade all of these points right here. We're still going to use those same points, but instead of doing all the grading on the side seam, so see how the center front doesn't change here? Sometimes a designer might decide to grade the center front of the pattern, center front and center back. So you can see here in the X direction, there's a 1/4 inch change in the neckline. And there's also a 1/4 inch change at the hem at the center front. So basically that 1/2 inch grade is split in half. Or if it's a 3/4 inch grade. So in this case, well, in this case, I think that's a typo. I have 3/8 of an inch there. Really, that should be a 1/4 to make it a 2-inch grade. So really 3/8 of an inch would be a 3-inch grade. Does that make sense? So see, that's a little typo. I'll fix that in the workbook there. But basically you can change how you grade your pattern. And for example, I've gone from grading my pants patterns at the center front, center back, and side to just grading along the side seam until I get to the crotch now. So just keep in mind that those can change. So if you have a pattern that's got it graded on both sides, you're going to have to divide the grade in half, the total amount that you would just move the side seam, divide it in half. Okay, so now here, this is an example of all the grading being done at the side seam. So whereas this one was graded center, front, back, and side seam, this one's just graded at the side seam. All right, so this is the grading ruler. Basically, you can print this off on overhead projector film, and then you can see through it. I like printing out a few of them, and that way, if I want to punch holes with like a push pin or, you know, my seam ripper, so I can actually, I can mark through it if I make holes in the little intersections, if I'm using it a lot for the same movements, or you can stick a pointer underneath there to identify how you're going to move your points. And I'll show you that in a minute. But if you don't have a grading ruler, oh, wait a minute, let me just finish this. I'm sorry. So this is just an example of how you would use this ruler. The center bullet area that's in the circle, that's your 0, 0 for X and Y. And if the grade point for moving the point is +1/4, in the Y direction, you're going to count up 2 intersections. Each of these little boxes is 1/8 of an inch. So for 1/4, you'd move it up 2 and you would mark that area where that black dot is. And if the grade rule didn't have, in this case, it was 0 in the X direction. Notice I'm not going out off of the Y, I'm just going up. So that's an example of how to use this ruler. And then this is a clear grid ruler. You can use the end of your clear grid ruler to grade your patterns as well. Some of them have holes in the intersections between the 2 inches of the width. That can be your 0, 0 point, and then you can use the 1/8 inch blocks to do the same thing. Okay, so we're going to do step by step how to grade a shirt front. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to trace a copy of your pattern onto pattern paper, and you're going to make yourself a little XY axis so you can position the center front or center back on the vertical line. And you're going to trace your pattern and you're going to mark the points that you're going to grade. So center front is number 1, the shoulder at neckline, shoulder at armhole, the armhole notch, the top of the side seam, the waist, and the hem. And then I also marked the center front at the hem. And the way this works is you use the grade rule chart, and in the workbook, I have all the grade rules done for you. I have a 1.5, a 2, a 3-inch grade rule, so you can follow along with these. And basically, you're just going to start with 1, and you're going to move or mark 2 little blocks going up to get the 1/4 inch, and we're not going to go in the X direction because the first grade point has 0 for X. And then what you're going to do is I just cut myself a little piece of like oak tag, and I made a little pointer that I could slide between the ruler and underneath the ruler to mark where that position is. And then I lift the ruler off and I mark a little bracket. Notice to mark this grade point, I didn't use a dot. I used a sort of an upside down L shape. The reason why I use that shape is because if you're going to be, redrawing the graded size, any areas that sew together have to have a 45-degree or a 90-degree angle coming off of the center front. So your scoop still looks like a scoop, not a V-neck. So that's why I drew this little bracket. And I'll show you how that works once we draw in the final shape. So we move on to number 2. And again, for number 2, the grade rule is -1/8. So we're going to go in the minus direction, 1 block over, and then we're going to go up 2 blocks to get that 1/4 inch. And you can see the pointer. First here on the left is the 1 going to the left. And then on the right, you can see up 2 to get the 1/4. And we're going to mark that position with the same bracket shape. And then we're going to do the same thing for the armhole side of the shoulder. We're going to go out 1 and up 2. And then we're going to mark that. And you can see that's going to help us really define the shoulder very easily. And then the start of the top of the armhole and the start of the top of the neckline. It's going to be very easy to draw that in. All right, so now we're down to the notch at the front armhole. And this grade rule was 3/16 and 0 in the vertical direction. So I'm going 1.5 blocks out in the left direction. And then I'm going to, instead of doing a bracket, this grade point is going to be part of a smooth line that goes from the shoulder down to the side seam. So instead of a bracket, I'm just using a short little line to mark the position of that one. And then this is just to show you here, this is not really important if you're grading one size, but when you're grading across a range of sizes, like let's say you're developing a pattern to sell in a range of sizes. When I grade for those types of situations, I actually turn my grading ruler so that the at Y direction is sort of parallel to the curve instead of it being not parallel. Can you guys see the difference? I wrote it in red in the right hand illustration here. And I will show you, it's a very minuscule change when you apply the grade rule to it. So you can see the red dot here is where it would be if I, made the Y axis parallel to that curved line versus leaving it, straight, at a 90-degree angle, the black circle. So again, this is not going to be a significant thing if you're just grading up a couple sizes, but if you're doing a full range of sizes, that little bit across the range really makes it a little bit more accurate when you look at the final graded nest. Okay, so now we're moving down to the top of the side seam, and again we're going to in this case we're not going anywhere in the Y direction. We're just going to go out 4 blocks for 1/2 inch in the negative left direction, and we're going to make the bracket so we can shape our base of our armhole and side seam. And then at the waist, we're just going to go out 4 blocks for 1/2 inch, and we're going to use a short line like we did for the armhole notch. Okay, and then you do the same thing at the hem. Apparently I skipped that grade point 7 because now I'm showing you how to draw in the shape. So you can use your existing pattern to help grade in curved lines. So you can see here what I did was the white pattern, I laid it right on top of my traced graded markings. And if you line up the center front with the bracket for the neckline, and then sort of nestle in the tip of the shoulder at the neckline into that bracket, you can draw in the neckline shape. And notice, you can see how it's growing because the graded pattern underneath is going to be longer. It doesn't, the original neckline doesn't fit into the total new shape of the neckline because it is growing a little bit. Oh, huh. All right. So this would be an example of my slide somehow got shifted. This should have been next. So here, just to finish that up, that's the 1/2 inch at the hem. So I'll fix that for next time. I'm sorry, I must have jostled it without realizing. All right. So this slide also, I'm so sorry. I should have showed you this before I showed you how to draw it in. You can see all of your markings along the edge of your trace pattern that you're going to be connecting to create your size. So you can see your center front, shoulder, armhole, and side seam. So that's how it looks. And then if we go back to this one, that's where you lay your pattern right on to get your neckline. I'm sorry about that. I must have screwed that up at some point. So when you draw the new neckline, again, you're just going to put the original pattern so it touches the brackets and you're going to trace it. And the important thing here is, see how the original pattern is parallel to the new center front edge of the traced pattern? You want to make sure you keep that the same, or else the shape of your neckline might get a little bit skewed. All right, so there is the redrawn front neckline on the left. Now, to get your new shoulder, all you really have to do is use your ruler to connect the brackets at the shoulder. Then for the armhole, I do it in 2 steps. I will do a curved, I'll put the original pattern onto the trace from the tip of the shoulder down to the armhole. And then I'll shift it so I can move the, I'll push the original pattern down so it's closer to the bracket at the side seam, and I'll trace the second half. So I trace the upper half of the armhole first, and then I slide the original pattern down a little bit so I can get the shape of the lower armhole. And then for the new side seams, I usually just use my ruler for that. If you've got a significant curvy shape here, you can use the side of your original pattern, but basically I'm going to connect the bracket at the top of the side seam to the waist, and then I'm going to draw the waist down to the hem like that. And you can see you can use your original pattern if you want to. But you're definitely going to want to use the original pattern to do the hem, because see what happens when you grade the hem edge out. If you have a shaped, like a shirt tail hem here, notice that even though we didn't move in the vertical direction, the graded point adds a little bit of length to the hem. So if you've got a shaped hem, it's really helpful to use the original pattern to connect that from the side seam to the center front. All right, and then you want to transfer your notches. So you want to just add your armhole notch and your waist notch or any other notches that you have. And then you're going to do the exact same steps to grade the back of your shirt. So I don't think we're going to do it here, but that's basically the same steps. And here's an example of differences between grading the front and back. Sometimes the front may have a slightly bigger grade than the back, especially for women's patterns. Women's fronts can grow more than the back, so there might be a slight difference between grade rules. In this case, it doesn't show that, but that's probably why in the beginning when I had the little 3/8 of an inch on that grade rule and I said it was a typo, that probably was an example of the front being graded 1/8 of an inch bigger than the back. just to give the bust and tummy area a little bit more room. All right, so if you're going to grade down, you can do this process and you can use the same grade rule. You're just going to switch your positive and negative numbers. So you would follow the same process, but you would just go in the opposite direction. So if we wanted to go down a size, instead of going up a quarter at the center front, you're going to go down a quarter on the shoulders. You're going to go inward at the armhole notch, so you can see you're drawing on your traced pattern. And the same thing with your side seams. Okay, so now we're going to talk about grading the sleeve. So what you're going to do to grade the sleeve, the graded armhole and the cap need to obviously fit into each other. So what you do is you add up the total on the armhole. So the total here was 3/4 of an inch. You can see here, we added a 1/2 inch at the base of the armhole at the side seam, and we added 1/4 at the top at the shoulder. So what you do is you add that up and you get 1.5 inches. And then what you're going to do is you're going to divide that in half again, and you're going to get 3/4 of an inch. And you're going to move out the tops of the armhole, the cap, 3/8 of an inch. So, and I'm sure you've seen this on your printed patterns that you've purchased. If you look at the side seam of the garment, it's got this big grade, and then you look at the grading on the underarm seams, and it's much smaller. That's why, because you have to consider the fact that you're pushing it out on each side, and also the curved line is getting longer. Now, this is an example just to show you what happens when you move out the pattern. So another way to grade is you can slice the pattern up and slide the pieces around. And what happens with the armhole is as the, as you push out those two ends on the right and left of the, at the top of the underarm seam, it's going to add 1/8 of an inch along the back cap. I'm sorry, 1/4 inch on the back cap, 1/4 inch on the front cap, because that curved line that's higher than the original is going to be longer. So I'm just trying to break it up here and show you how you get the total amount. So you can do it like this. You're just going to slide it out. But then when you go to draw that in and this cap is above the original cap, what you don't see in that is that it does make the actual curved line longer. All right, so here's an example of a sleeve grade. So from the back wrist, it's going to be 1/8 on either on the down here at the wrist. And we're going to make it a little bit longer, and we're going to make it a little bit wider. So we're going 1/4 in the X and 1/4 in the Y. Then at the back underarm, we're doing 3/8. That's up here. Then we're going to do the shoulder. We're going to go down. Oops, I'm sorry. Down 1/8. And then the front notch is down 1/8. And then over here, we're coming in. This example is showing how to, this example is showing how to come in, make a smaller grade. So the gray, wait a minute, hold on one second here. No, front underarm. Yeah, this is showing, making it smaller. So we're going, because in the front, we're going a -1/8, that's bringing it in. And in the back, we did a +1/8, which brought it out. Okay, so now what happens with this is, if you see the horizontal spread agrees with the grade around the cap. So you can see right here where I showed the splitting of the 1/8 inch. See how that's 1/8 inch up? So I'm just trying to show how some of the grading in the sleeve, you don't see it because of the curve that grows. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the sleeves? Okay. All right. So now to do a bust, these are standard grade rules I pulled out of one of my grading books. So you can use these to grade your bust starts up or down. And also the fisheye darts here. And I just want to point out to you that the tip of the dart does not move as much as the dart legs themselves, because the whole thing with bust darts is once you grade it, you're still going to need to test it. So the angle changes a little bit. Whoops, I'm sorry. The angle changes a little bit. So just keep in mind, if you're grading up or down a shirt that has a bust dart, definitely check that in do a fit muslin. And also I want to point out with these bust dart grade rules that if you're grading a pattern that you've already fitted to yourself, that's going to be a little bit more accurate than if you're using a pattern that you haven't tried yet because it's not in your size, you can use these grade rules, but then definitely measure from your shoulder to the tip of the dart to make sure it's in the correct spot vertically for you. But these are the grade rules to move, one size up or down. Okay, and then for small pieces, these are the points and how you would grade, for collars and cuffs. All right, so now I want to just talk about pants here for a minute. When you grade pants, the grade points can be center front, and then the edge of a pocket, and then the edge of the pocket at the side seam. So keep in mind, if you don't have a pocket like this, you may just have your center front and then your side at the waist and side seam intersection. But if you've got a front pocket with a shape, you do want to grade both ends of that pocket so it grows proportionally with the size that you're grading the pattern. So for the center front, we're going to go up a quarter. I'm sorry, we're going to go out a quarter and up 5/16. And the rest of these we can just read through, but basically these are the grade rules for pants. Notice I cut it off at the knee here because basically the important part of the grading happens here, and then you can add the length of your leg from the knee down. So if you're working on a pattern and you want to just trace it and concentrate on the area that's getting actually graded, you can do that way. Here is the back of pants and jeans. And again, I'm showing you these grade rules, but you're going to do the process the exact same way as I showed you step by step for the shirt. Okay, and then there's the back yoke if you're doing jeans. Okay, for skirts, again, just the list of grade, a 2-inch grade rule for skirts and showing you where the grade points are. And there's the back. Okay, so now I want to talk about copying a grade rule. So let's say you have a pattern, you lost the envelope and you just have the tissue or the actual pattern pieces. You can use the grade rule to determine how that pattern was graded. So you can see here, I'm at the center back at the waist. You can see that we went down a quarter and over a quarter to go down to the next size. So I've indicated that by a negative quarter and a positive quarter there. And then you can move to each part and you can compare. So like here is the, the grade point at the curve of the crotch. It goes over a quarter, but it stays the same vertically. And then here's the tip of the crotch. It goes over a quarter, and it also goes down a 1/16 of an inch. So using the grade ruler can help show you how a pattern is graded. And somebody mentioned children's clothes when we were talking before I started my slideshow. This is the perfect way. If you've got let's say you bought a pattern, a child's pattern, and you want to grade it into different sizes, you can use the actual graded pieces to make your own grade rule for, let's say you need to grade up a couple sizes because it doesn't go up big enough, or if it doesn't go small enough, you can grade down sizes. But I would use the pattern pieces themselves, and I would copy the grade rule using the ruler. All right, and that would be the end of my slideshow. And again, I mentioned before everyone got in here, but if you want to purchase the workbook and the grading ruler, it's normally $15, but because you're in the class and the slideshow is taken from the workbook, I wanted to make it super affordable. So if you want to get the workbook, just use Santa Rosa 50 to get 50% off. All right, so that would be my exciting
Excellent, Jennifer. Very, very informative. Any questions for Jennifer?
I do have to say, you guys get the prize for the least amount of questions asked during class, which is fine. But I mean, if you have questions, please feel free to ask me. And if you don't, that's also fine. But
I see Mary Glarden has a question.
Yes. Hi, Jennifer. Thanks so much for being here today. My question is, you said you were going to change a couple of things in your workbook. What were those that if we buy them, we can make those changes?
well, I said that, but I might amend. Let me just look in the actual workbook here. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm actually not going to change it because in the actual workbook where I put an illustration of a grade rule, and I said it was a 2-inch grade, which would mean the side seams would be graded only a 1/2 inch, right?
Yes.
But then I showed it split. Basically, I say on the page in the workbook that the front grade is a 1/4 inch wider than the back. So I think I just pulled that chart out and put it on my slideshow, and I should have picked a standard one. So it's really not wrong in the workbook.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And I will tell you that I had this very nice gentleman who purchased my workbook in the summer after an event, and he found some things, and I'd already changed those things. So I'm fairly confident that he would have found any other boo-boos, but if you find one, I will give you a gold star. Let me know and I will change it.
Okay.
Thank you. It looks like we have another question, Bradley. You can unmute, Bradley.
Just trying to find the button.
I know.
Does your workbook have these grade rules in it, or would we need a separate book to get?
Oh, no. Let me, I'm going to switch my view here. Let me get my camera. I have this camera on a jib. Say my big camera. I'm going to go to my table shot so I can show you the actual workbook, and I can show you all the stuff that's in here. Hold on.
Then I have one other question with the children's pattern thing.
Okay, go ahead and ask while I'm setting my thing up here.
So going from, say, infant to toddler sizes, would it still work to grade up an infant pattern to get to a toddler, or the body?
That's a very good question. I think I'm not super knowledgeable about kids patterns because I don't design kids clothes, but I think if you just need one, if you buy one infant pattern that's the largest size and one toddler pattern that's the smallest size, then compare the difference to where that size range would join. And I do think I would definitely copy the the grade rule off of the kid patterns.
Okay.
All right, is that
Yeah.
sharp? Can you see?
Yeah, that's showing up pretty well.
All right, so this is the workbook, and what I want to do is I just want to show you, I'm going to take myself and move myself right off the screen, just so I'm not in the way. So basically, I have in here, so I have 2-inch grade when you're grading both the side and center. So I have that. I have a 2-inch grade to with no grading at center, front, and back. So it's the front, back, and the sleeve. Then we have a 3-inch grade, no center, front, and back. And then we have how to use the ruler. And then these are all the graphics that I showed on the slideshow of how to grade step by step. Okay, and then I talk about the differences between grading the front and the back here. And then how to grade the sleeve. And then I show how to do that step by step as well. And then, okay, and then I include grade rules on how to decrease the size. So I have a 2-inch grade rule to decrease. And then 3-inch to decrease. And then I'm showing how to grade down. So I actually physically show you the steps to grading down. And then we have the dart rules. And then you have your 2-inch grade for pants. Front and back. The skirts, the 2-inch grade, and then also how to copy a grade. I have that information. Yeah, and that's it. So all those grade rules are in there for you.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a totally separate enlargement for full size 8 shoulder, 40-inch bust, 5'8" tall? Your grading rules would not accommodate a big bust if you just add at the side, because that's going to change. It won't change the back width, or it will change the back width, which is not needed. When you have a full bust, do you have a totally different training for that?
So, okay, so grading the pattern is just going to make the front and back and sleeve one size bigger or smaller.
Right, for a standard B-cup bust.
Right. So if you have a pattern that you haven't fitted to yourself and you need to grade it up a size, then you're going to have to do a full bust adjustment to it after. So
Okay.
grade it up the size and then do your full bust. But also the first thing you're going to do is you're going to measure from your shoulder to your apex.
Right.
And then you're going to compare that to your dart.
Yes.
And your bust dart should be, if you're an A, B, C.
How about a G?
G, I'm a G. Okay, so let's
Okay.
jump right to G.
That's
G,
a 4-inch dart at the side seam.
yeah, it's a big dart, but it's also about an inch lower than your apex.
Yes.
And it's also farther from your apex. So my darts can be almost an inch to an inch and a quarter away from my apex. So
Right.
the bigger the cup size, the farther away it is.
Right.
So you have to consider all of that, but you get the pattern to be the bigger or smaller size, and then you would need to adjust for things like bust.
Okay. So do you have a separate video for that kind of adjustment, or is that something we just kind of learn by doing it?
I have so many tutorials on my YouTube channel. If you go to my channel and you put in the search in my channel, full bust adjustment, I show how to do it. If there isn't a dart, I probably show it if there is a dart.
Okay.
I have Fit Tip Tuesday. So every Tuesday I do a pattern fitting tip. Last week was sway back for pants.
Ah,
And then actually this week, I'm going to be doing a review of a new Notion that I got in the mail and I love it. So I'm super excited. So this week it'll be a Notion, but a lot of times it's a fit tip. So I have so many, I probably have a fit tip for anything you could possibly need to adjust on my YouTube channel.
Well, the other thing I noticed was when you showed the jeans pattern, you had a very slanted crotch back. That
Yes.
doesn't fit flat butts. You have to have a more J.
Yes. All right. So so that's a good time for me to talk about my new pants pattern. And I'm going to share my screen with you again. Because what I want to do is it's going to also continue answering your question about pants, because I've been doing pants fitting for over 10 years, and you are absolutely right. A angled back crotch seam makes too much room inside your pants if you have a flat butt.
Yes.
And what I want to show you here, I'm going to show you, hold on. Oh, all right, so it's going to take a second for the pattern to, when I have 14 things open, it takes a minute. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you again, and I'm going to, oops, I should have gotten rid of that. Let me just shut that. I'm going to open my Illustrator here. And what I want to show you in my new pants pattern, my Sorsha Classic Slim Trousers, this is the PDF version. Let me just move this little doodad out of the way. Okay, so what this is showing us is, I want to zoom in on the front. Let's start in the front. See how, oh, actually, let's start in the back so I can continue with that talk. All right, so see this red dashed line on the center back?
Yep.
That is a guideline to trace if you have a flat butt.
Yes.
So I've included guidelines for flat butt in the back. Also, I'm including the guidelines you would need to adjust or add to your pattern to use the top-down center-out style pants fitting, where you actually let the fitting choose or determine your front and back crotch length. So those blue and green dash lines are what you're going to add to your pattern after you trace your size. But in the back, we have the flat butt. And then I don't know if you know, but in the front, if you have a pattern that has an angled center front, like this red dash line right here, that's for a defined waist. So if your pants are sitting at your waist, which is your smallest part, you need an angle here. If you're shaped like a rectangle like me, you need it to be straight and parallel with the grain line, or more straight and parallel. It doesn't need to be exactly straight, because what happens is if you have a rectangular shape and you have an angled center front, what happens is when you zip up your zipper, it pushes the side seam waist up to sit on your defined waist. And if you don't have a defined waist, what happens is that fabric, because it doesn't have anywhere to go up and smaller, it actually pushes down into the center of your zipper and it looks like you sewed your fly wrong. So I've included those things in this pattern to help you get yourself on the right track early on. So I just thought that was sort of an interesting thing to share, because you are absolutely right. This needs to be straight for a flat butt. Is everybody good with that? Stop sharing. All right, so yay for that.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Thanks for sharing that. It looks like Annalise has a question.
Hi, thank you for your presentation.
Oh.
Do you have a general answer for why sleeves twist?
Okay, so my general answer for why sleeves twist is they can twist for a couple of reasons. It could be that you don't have the ease distributed in your cap, the cap ease distributed into the armhole. It can also do funny things if you have a forward ball of your shoulder and it's too long in the front versus, not long enough in the back, and that can cause it to twist. Those are like the two biggest reasons I have for that.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I do have tutorials for all those things on my YouTube.
Well, I went to your YouTube and I don't see the twisting conversation, but
Oh, yeah, I don't think I've ever said twist.
I'll keep looking.
Look for anything with fitting a sleeve or forward ball of the shoulder.
Okay.
And I even did this one woman I was working with. We could not fit her sleeve to save her life. She ended up draping it on her arm. And what ended up happening was she actually had to have a diagonal underarm seam to get it to hang right.
A diagonal underarm seam. What
Yes.
does that look like?
All right, hold on. Let's see if we can just go right over here to my,
Diagonal underarm seam.
Wait, I'll
Instead
show
of a
you.
curved seam, you mean?
oh, wait a minute. Let me just shut that for a second. Hold on, let me go over to my YouTube here. Hold on. So this is my YouTube channel. Okay, so if I go to, who's gonna start talking? I gotta shut that off. Okay, all right, so if I go over here to my search and I put in sleeve. Let me just do that. And let's search that for a second. I think it'll come up.
I also did that.
We go to videos. Hold on. I'm just gonna scroll down because I'll be able to see it.
Drag lines.
See this?
Drape your sleeve to eliminate drag lines.
Yeah, this one right here.
I've been looking for a product like this my whole life. I wear this product every day.
Okay, I've got it.
In the mirror. Hey,
Okay.
everybody.
Oh, right. All right. So I guess you don't need to
I'll take a look
we
at
talk
it.
about it, but this was amazing. And actually, the person I was working with should get all the, I was working with her and she really figured that out. So that really was kind of a cool thing. So I did it on my dress form. I kind of made a stuffed arm to kind of show how to do it. So that's one.
Thank you. I'll take a
You're-
look at that.
Okay.
If I get stuck, I'll touch base with you.
Oh yeah, feel free to email me if you have specific questions, because one of the things I really love doing is subscriber Q&A. So like if someone has a question and I know there's one person in the sewing universe who needs that answer, I'm really motivated to do that versus making something else out of my head. You know what I'm saying? So like if I don't have a plan for that week, I'll go look at my list of questions and I answer every question. That's what I do. I wake up, I have my coffee, and I spend however long it takes in the morning to answer every question on my YouTube. So feel free to ask questions because I will help you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other final questions for Jennifer today?
I just have one question.
Mhm.
Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand. But anyway, so grading down, you have that in the PDF as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, there are.
For
I have
small
one-
sizes. For small sizes. For small sizes.
I think I just did a 2-inch there. If it's really small sizes, you can cut the 2-inch grade into a 1-inch grade and just half the numbers. But I think I only did 2-inch grade for that. Yes, 2-inch grade.
Okay, so just cut it in half.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if you're like, what size are you working with?
Now, I'm trying to figure that out. I think at 8, I'm guessing, or 6 or 8.
All right, so what I would do with that is, just sit here for 1 second.
I'm not really sure, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not.
I think I would, oh, you know what I would do for 6 to 8? That's more of an 1.5 inch grade.
Okay.
So divide the 3-inch grade in half,
Okay.
and that'll give you an 1.5 inch.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I just wanted to make mention that Marie Nielsen did put the link for the Jennifer's website in the chat. So if any of you are having trouble with that, it's in the chat. You can copy it and paste it in your browser. And again, thank you so much. Very informative presentation today, Jennifer.
And I just want to say, if anybody wants the new pants pattern, it is on sale until Friday when I'm starting a sew along for it on my YouTube live. I'm live Fridays at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Super.
Extra little information.
That's not right.
Okay.
Thank you for
Again,
inviting me.
thank you. So we're gonna actually take a 10-minute break, and then when we come back, we're gonna resume with our business meeting. But you're welcome to stay and join us. Those of you, certainly you, Jennifer, and those of you who are visiting from other chapters today. Okay.
Okay, I might have to hop off because I have a 3 o'clock, but I really, really enjoyed spending time with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jen.
So Lyra, you want to stop the recording?
Okay. Done. But nope, not yet. There it goes.